what about stable trends? What if we want to talk about, no change at all? Well, once again, we can follow the verb phrase structure, or we can follow the noun phrase structure. So let's go down here and let's see how we can write these different structures. So here we are describing no change. So describing no change in data. And there are two structures. Remember, we have the verb phrase structure and the noun phrase structure. Let's start with the verb phrase structure. So the verb phrase structure, similar to the verb phrase structure that we use to describe increases and decreases, it starts with the subject. So we have, the number of students. But then the verb phrase that you use will be described here. So the verb phrases that you could use, I'll try to categorize them all here in the form of another table. So these tables should help out a lot. Yes, so check it out. One form of this verb phrase for describing no change in our data is to say it stayed the same. So the number of students stayed the same. You could say the number of students remained steady or remained stable. Right? Same structure, really. It's just different wording. Same structure and just different verb phrase that we're using. Or if you even want to create more variety, you could say the number of students experienced no change at all. That's for emphasis if you want to add the at all. Or very simply, you could say the number of students did not change. Okay, so here you use subject, verb phrase, and then you have your adverb at the end. So if we want to color code this and then come up with an example, the subject was color coded in green, so it's the same structure as before. The verb phrase, we're going to use the same color as above, so we'll use red one more time, and the adverb was consistently shown in blue, so we're going to do the same. Now, let's try to write a few examples here for you all to see. So my first example is going to be the number of students remained steady from January to March. Notice what I did? The number of students, this is my subject, so I'm going to color code this in green. And then remained steady, this is my verb phrase that I'm using. And so if you're wondering where did these verb phrases come from, here. Remember, I just introduced them to you. So these are all the structures that you could describe no change at all. Okay? And then from January to March, that's my adverb. Can I play around with this structure? 100%. So what I could do is this time I could say from January to March, the number of students remained stable. Or you know what? Why not use a different structure altogether? Experienced no change. Again, if we are to color code this, we would say from January to March is my initial adverb. And then the number of students, that would be my subject. And then experienced no change is the verb phrase that I'm using. Now, you might be wondering at this point, how do we describe the amount? Like, if it's the same, we still have to mention what number it was stuck on, right? So what was that number where it remained steady or stable? Well, this is easy. You could use at, right? So the preposition for describing amounts in adverbial form is at. I'll show you. So for example, you could say remained steady at 20% from January to March. So as you can see, again, the color coding would be the same because we marked all adverbs in blue. Or here we could say from January to March, the number of students experienced no change at 20%. All right, so it was stuck at this 20% level. So we have two adverbs, and as you can see, sometimes we can put both adverbs next to each other at 20%, adverb of quantity from January to March, adverb of time. And sometimes we separate them. So here we have from January to March, adverb of time at 20%. That is my adverb of quantity. But remember, there's also another structure that I can use to this end. So far, we've looked at the verb phrase structure. And now we're going to look at the noun phrase structure for describing stable trends. And once again, it's going to be very similar to the noun phrase structure that we saw for describing increases, decreases, and fluctuations. So this time we're going to say there was, okay, just like before. Remember, we had a fixed expression, there was. I'm going to highlight that in the same color. So we're going to highlight that in yellow. And then after that, you're going to use the noun phrase. And so just like before, how we had the noun phrases color coded in purple, we're going to do the same again. So here, noun phrase, and then you add any adverb to the end of your sentence. So this is the color. Okay, we should now be able to paraphrase these two sentences which we wrote before, and this time transform them into the noun phrase structure, right? So let's push this all down to a fresh page, and then from there we'll see how we can paraphrase our structure from the verb phrase structure here to the noun phrase structure as seen here. Okay, let's try to do this. The first sentence says the number of students remained steady at 20% from January to March. Okay, I'm not going to shuffle the order around. I could, but I just want to show you how you can take the verb phrase structure and turn it into a noun phrase structure. I'm not going to make any additional changes deliberately. So let's see. We're going to say there was, and this is the fixed structure, and so I'm going to highlight that in yellow. Okay, so there was. What do I have after that? Well, after there was, I'm going to mention the noun phrase. So what is this noun phrase that I'm supposed to use? Let me introduce these noun phrases to you, and you'll see how easy it is to find the matching structure. So, for example, in the verb phrase, we said stayed the same, remained steady, remained stable. These were the structures that we were using previously. So now we have to see what their equivalents are in noun phrase format. So, for example, you could say no change, or a period of stability, or perhaps you could say little change. And so there's a difference between saying little change and a little change. Never say there was a little change, because you're focusing on there being a change. But when you say there was little change, it means it was so little that it was insignificant. We're focusing on the fact that it was so small that we can, neglect it, or we can somehow not even consider it because the change is so minuscule. So check it out. I have the noun phrase in purple. So there was, I'm going to go with no change, right? In the previous one, what did I say? They said remained steady. So I think I could use no change. So there was no change. Make sure the color's right. And then I'm going to say in what, right? So there was no change. And then I have to mention what? I forgot to mention this here. You see, when you say there was noun phrase, and then you're going to say in, just like the previous structure that we had. So this is fixed. This is going to be yellow. And then you add the subject. Never forget the subject. The subject always has to be included here. And if you recall, for the subject, the color we would use is green. So I'm just going to use the same color here. And there you go. Okay, so check it out. There was no change. Now I'm going to add the preposition in. And then following this, I'm going to add my subject, which is the number of students, right? So this is something I can copy. There was no change in the number of students. And then I'm going to mention the time from January to March. But I haven't mentioned the amount. Remember, there was no change in the number of students. I can place both adverbs here next to each other. So let's see. The original sentence in the verb phrase style was the number of students remained steady at 20% from January to March. The noun phrase equivalent is there was no change in the number of students at 20% from January to March. Let's do another one. Again, if you like, you can pause the video here and do this for yourself and then play the video and see if you got it right. It says from January to March. Okay, I'm gonna repeat this. So the initial adverb, I'm just gonna keep it in place. And then I'm gonna say there was, this one goes here. No need for the T to be capital. It's in the middle of my sentence. So there was what? It says experience no change. So here I'm going to say a period of stability between or from January to March. There was a period of stability. Okay, remember this is one of the noun phrase structures that I listed here. A period of stability. And then what am I going to add? Well, there was a period of stability in the number of students. Remember, the subject needs to be mentioned. Same color coding as before, so it's not going to be very different. And then finally, I have at 20%, right? Let's see, where does this go? From January to March, there was a period of stability in the number of students. Yes, so we want it to be close to the noun phrase, at 20%. So there you have it. These are the two structures that we use to describe no change or stability in the data that we're describing. If you enjoyed this video, please do me a favor, like, subscribe, and share this link with other people who may find this content useful. As always, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.